In the Have you ever tried to please everyone around you? Maybe you've tried being the perfect child, the perfect friend, the perfect partner, or the perfect employee, and yet somehow, despite all your efforts, you feel exhausted, frustrated, and sometimes even invisible. Here's a truth we often ignore: you cannot please everyone. Life will always have people who disagree, people who judge, and people who expect more than you can give. And the moment you try to become everything for everyone, you lose yourself. Let me tell you something very simple but powerful. Your purpose is not to make everyone happy. Your purpose is to live authentically with love, integrity, and compassion. When you do that, you naturally inspire, touch, and guide others. But not everyone will understand or agree. And that is okay. Imagine this: you are a lamp. You can shine your light brightly, but not everyone will appreciate it. Some people will cover it with a jar of criticism or walk away in darkness. That doesn't mean your light is any less valuable. That doesn't mean you stop shining. Life is not about pleasing everyone. It's about being true to yourself, being kind, and giving your best where it matters most. There will always be challenges, disagreements, and criticism, but peace comes when you realize that your energy is precious, your time is limited, and your love is a gift. Have you ever noticed how much of our energy goes into trying to make others happy? From a very young age, we are taught to be polite, to obey, to conform, and to seek approval. We are told that if we behave a certain way, people will like us, and we might feel loved, accepted, or safe. And so slowly, almost imperceptibly, many of us grow up carrying this invisible burden. The idea that our happiness depends on the approval of others. But here's a truth that life gently teaches over time: no matter how hard you try, you cannot please everyone. You might be the most diligent student in class, the most caring friend, or the most loving child at home. Yet there will always be someone who criticizes, someone who misunderstands, or someone who expects something different from what you can give. It is not about your effort or your intentions. It is about the fact that every individual has their own perspective, their own expectations, and their own version of perfect. And when you try to mold yourself into all these versions simultaneously, you end up stretched thin, exhausted, and disconnected from your own truth. Think about it. If you tried to make everyone happy, you would have to constantly monitor your words, actions, and even your thoughts. You would weigh every decision against what others might think. And in the process, you would slowly lose the clarity of your own voice. Your life would no longer be yours. It would be a patchwork of other people's desires. And even then, despite all your effort, there would still be someone who complains, someone who is dissatisfied, and someone who is disappointed. Life has a way of teaching us that trying to meet everyone's expectations is not only futile, but also deeply unfair to ourselves. The irony is that people often don't realize this until they are exhausted or emotionally drained. They might spend years chasing approval, performing roles, and adjusting their personality to fit in, all while believing that happiness lies in others' smiles or applause. And yet, in the real freedom comes the moment we stop trying to be what others want us to be. It comes when we acknowledge that the world is full of different opinions, different desires, and different standards of right, and we accept that we cannot and should not be everything for everyone. This doesn't mean that we stop caring for others or stop being compassionate. On the contrary, it means that our care becomes more genuine because it flows from a place of authenticity, not obligation. When we accept that we cannot please everyone, we stop measuring our value by someone else's happiness. We stop bending ourselves into unnatural shapes and start standing tall in our own truth. This realization is liberating. It frees us from the endless cycle of trying to earn approval, from the subtle anxiety of, did I do enough? Or, did they like me? We begin to invest our energy where it truly matters. In growth, in love that flows naturally, and in creating value that resonates with who we really are. Pleasing everyone is a dream that no one can achieve because it is built on an illusion. The sooner we realize this, the sooner we reclaim our peace, our joy, and our sense of purpose. Life is not about collecting the applause of all. It is about living in integrity with your own heart and contributing in a way that feels meaningful to you. Once we accept that it's impossible to please everyone, we open ourselves to a life that is lighter, freer, and infinitely more fulfilling. Many of us live our lives quietly asking the same question: am I enough? We look for signs in the smiles, praises, and approval of others to determine our value. If someone compliments us, we feel worthy. If someone criticizes us, we feel small. Our emotions rise and fall based on someone else's perception of who we are. And in doing so, we give away one of the most precious gifts we have, our self-worth. But here's a truth that often comes as a shock: your worth is not determined by approval. No amount of praise, likes, recognition, or applause can define the real value of your existence. From the moment you were born, you were enough, exactly as you were, exactly as you are. That does not mean you shouldn't grow, learn, or improve. It simply means that your core value, the essence of who you are, is inherent. You do not earn it by performing for others, nor can it be taken away by someone's criticism or neglect. Think about this. A diamond doesn't need anyone to tell it it's precious. It simply is. A tree doesn't grow taller or stronger because of someone noticing it. It grows because that is its nature. Similarly, your value is intrinsic. Yet, human beings have a tendency to measure themselves externally through achievements, appearances, or popularity because we have been conditioned to seek validation. The danger is that we forget the internal truth. Our worth comes from being human, from living authentically, and from striving to bring goodness into the world. When we tie our sense of worth to approval, we start living a life dictated by others. We become cautious with our words, fearful in our actions, and hesitant to pursue dreams that might invite judgment. Imagine constantly walking through life, carrying a heavy backpack full of other people's opinions. Every like is a tiny relief, every dislike, a weight that drags you down. That is not freedom. That is living as a shadow of yourself. True empowerment comes the moment we internalize that approval is optional, but self-respect is mandatory. When you accept that your value is inherent, your actions become intentional rather than performative. You help, create, and love not to earn validation, but because it aligns with who you are and the kind of impact you want to make in the world. You are no longer dependent on applause to feel fulfilled, and criticism no longer defines your self-perception. Instead, you learn to discern feedback, grow from it if it serves you, and let go of judgments that do not align with your authentic path. This realization changes everything. Life becomes lighter, more joyful, and more purposeful. You take risks you would otherwise avoid, speak your truth without fear, and pursue passions that might have seemed unattainable. You become a source of inspiration not because you seek approval, but because you embody integrity in the courage and authenticity. People are drawn to those who are at peace with themselves, not to those who constantly try to please. Your worth cannot be measured by numbers, praise, or recognition. It is measured by the love you cultivate, the honesty you live with, and the courage you show in being unapologetically yourself. The sooner we internalize this truth, the sooner we step into the freedom of living a meaningful, fulfilling life. A life where we shine not for others, but because our light is already priceless. In a world that constantly tells us who we should be, being authentic can feel like an act of courage. Everywhere we look, there are expectations. Expectations from family, friends, colleagues, society, and even social media. They tell us how we should look, how we should act, what career we should pursue, and even how we should express our emotions. And in the process, many of us start living a life that is carefully constructed to gain approval, rather than one that reflects our true selves. But here's the truth: authenticity is more powerful than approval. When we live to please others, we live in fragments. We hide parts of ourselves, suppress our thoughts, and adjust our actions to fit someone else's vision of perfect. Over time, this becomes exhausting because living a life of pretense requires constant vigilance. You have to remember which version of yourself fits which crowd, which mask works in which situation. It is tiring, and it slowly erodes your sense of inner peace. Authenticity, on the other hand, is liberating. It is waking up each day and knowing that who you are is enough. It is speaking your truth even when it is uncomfortable. It is choosing paths and making decisions based on your values and passions, not because someone else expects them of you. When you live authentically, your energy aligns with your purpose, and life begins to flow with clarity and meaning. You stop seeking validation because your actions are grounded in your own integrity. Think about the people who inspire you the most. They are not admired because they constantly chase approval or mimic others. They are admired because they are unapologetically themselves. Their confidence comes not from the applause they receive, but from the alignment between who they are inside and how they show up in the world. When authenticity drives your actions, approval becomes secondary. And ironically, when you are truly yourself, you naturally attract people who resonate with your energy, creating connections that are genuine and lasting. Choosing authenticity over approval also means embracing imperfection. It means acknowledging your flaws, accepting your mistakes, and showing vulnerability without fear. You don't have to hide when you are scared, ashamed, or uncertain. In fact, vulnerability is one of the most authentic expressions of being human. When you are open and honest about who you are, you allow others to relate, to learn, and to grow with you. Approval may come and go, but authenticity leaves a lasting impact. It is not always easy to choose authenticity. Sometimes it means disappointing people you love, taking risks that others may not understand, or standing alone in your beliefs. But it is in these moments when you resist the temptation to conform that you discover the strength of your character. Approval is temporary, fleeting, and often unreliable. Authenticity, however, is a lifelong companion. It gives you confidence, inner peace, and a sense of purpose that cannot be shaken by external opinions. The sooner we embrace authenticity, the sooner we free ourselves from the exhausting cycle of trying to please everyone. When you live your truth, you live a life of integrity, courage, and joy. You stop measuring your worth by someone else's standards and start measuring it by the alignment between your values and your actions. Approval may come and it may not, but your life is no longer dictated by the fickle judgments of others. In choosing authenticity, you reclaim yourself, your energy, and your joy. And that is the greatest gift you can give to yourself and to the world. As we go through life, one thing becomes crystal clear: criticism is inevitable. No matter how carefully we live, how kindly we act, or how pure our intentions may be, someone, somewhere will find fault. It may come in the form of harsh words, subtle remarks, judgmental stares, or even silent disapproval. And yet, despite knowing this, many of us spend an enormous amount of energy trying to avoid it. We carefully edit our words, hide our true feelings, adjust our actions, and sometimes even change who we are in an attempt to escape criticism. But here's the truth. Criticism is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are showing up in the world. Think about it this way. If you live a life that is entirely safe, entirely conforming, and entirely unremarkable, criticism rarely finds you. But when you take a stand, when you try to grow, when you follow your dreams and speak your truth, criticism is bound to come. It is a natural byproduct of living authentically and courageously. And while it can sting, it also serves as a mirror. sometimes reflecting the insecurities or perspectives of others rather than your own worth or effort. The challenge is that criticism can be hard to separate from your sense of self. Human beings are wired to seek acceptance, and when we are criticized, it can feel like a personal attack. But over time, we learn that there is a difference between constructive feedback and destructive judgment. Constructive feedback can guide us, refine our efforts, and help us grow. Destructive criticism, however, often says more about the other person's fears, biases, or expectations than it does about our abilities or character. Recognizing this difference is the key to handling criticism without letting it weigh you down. Criticism is also inevitable because everyone has their own perspective, shaped by their experiences, beliefs, and expectations. No two people see the world in exactly the same way, and therefore no two people will agree entirely with your choices or your path. This does not mean you are wrong or that you need to change. It simply means that life is full of diverse viewpoints, and encountering criticism is part of the human experience. The sooner we accept this, the sooner we can focus our energy on what truly matters: our growth, our values, and our purpose. Interestingly, criticism can also become a tool for resilience and strength. When we face criticism without defensiveness, without fear, and without self-doubt, we build inner confidence. We learn to distinguish between what is worth listening to and what is not. We become less dependent on external approval and more attuned to our own judgment and intuition. In essence, criticism can serve as a kind of training ground for courage, helping us refine our character and deepen our understanding of who we are. The key is not to avoid criticism, but to accept it as a natural part of life and to respond wisely. Some criticism may be valuable, some may be irrelevant, and some may be unjust. Learning to navigate these distinctions without losing your peace is a skill that transforms challenges into growth. The moment we embrace the inevitability of criticism, we stop fearing it, we stop overanalyzing every word, and we begin living more freely. No one escapes criticism, and trying to do so is both impossible and exhausting. The freedom comes when we acknowledge that criticism is part of life, that it does not define us, and that it can even strengthen us if we choose to respond wisely. By accepting criticism as inevitable, we take the first step toward living courageously, authentically, and without the constant burden of fear, judgment, or doubt. One of the most important truths we often forget in life is that our energy is precious. Unlike money or possessions, which can be earned, lost, or replaced, the time and energy we have in this lifetime are finite. Every day, every hour, every moment carries a limited amount of mental, emotional, and physical energy. Yet so often, we give it away freely, sometimes to people who drain us, sometimes to situations that do not matter, and sometimes to thoughts and worries that lead nowhere. The question is, if our energy is so valuable, why do we spend it on things that do not serve us or uplift our lives? Think about how much energy we invest in trying to please others. How many hours do we spend overthinking what someone else might think? How often do we replay conversations in our heads, worrying about what we said or what we could have said differently? How frequently do we exhaust ourselves seeking approval or validation from people who may never truly appreciate our efforts? The harsh truth is that much of our energy is wasted on these pursuits. And the more we chase external validation, the less we have left for the things that truly matter. Energy is also precious because it determines the quality of our life. When our energy is scattered, depleted, or mismanaged, we feel fatigued, anxious, and unfulfilled. When we protect our energy and invest it wisely, we feel alive, purposeful, and capable of making meaningful contributions. Imagine your energy as a candle. If you waste it on unimportant matters, it burns out quickly. But if you direct it toward meaningful work, nurturing relationships, self-growth, and acts of kindness, it lights up not only your own life, but the lives of those around you. One of the most liberating lessons we can learn is that it is okay to say no. Saying no is not selfish. It is a way of preserving your energy for what truly matters. It is a way of protecting yourself from emotional exhaustion and from the endless cycle of trying to meet everyone else's expectations. Every time you say no to something that drains you, you say yes to your own well-being, your growth, and your peace of mind. Learning to prioritize your energy is not just practical, it is transformative. Energy is also influenced by our thoughts and emotions. Negative thinking, worry, and resentment are like invisible leaks in our energy. They drain us silently, leaving us feeling tired and overwhelmed. By cultivating awareness, practicing gratitude, and focusing on constructive thoughts, we can protect and replenish our energy. Just as we would not pour water into a cracked vessel, we must be mindful of where we invest our attention and effort. Finally, recognizing the preciousness of our energy allows us to live intentionally. We begin to surround ourselves with people who uplift us, engage in activities that inspire us, and focus on goals that align with our values. We stop chasing approval from those who do not matter, and we stop allowing unnecessary negativity to steal our joy. In doing so, we reclaim control over our lives, and we begin to live with clarity, purpose, and authenticity. Our energy is one of the greatest gifts we have. Once we understand its value and learn to protect it, we unlock the ability to live a life full of intention, focus, and joy. We become capable of shining brighter, loving deeper, and contributing more meaningfully, not because we are trying to please everyone, but because we are fully present, fully alive, and fully ourselves. In life, each of us carries a light within us, a light of talent, purpose, love, and possibility. This light is unique, and it is meant to illuminate the world in ways that only you can. But here's a truth many of us struggle with: not everyone will welcome your light. Some may try to dim it with criticism, jealousy, or misunderstanding. Others may simply walk past it, too absorbed in their own lives to notice. And yet, this is precisely why it becomes so important to shine your light despite resistance. Imagine a single candle burning in a dark room. Its light is small, yet powerful. Even if someone tries to cover it, even if the wind blows, even if darkness surrounds it, the flame persists. Your inner light works in exactly the same way. It doesn't depend on others' approval, recognition, or understanding. It exists to guide, inspire, and transform, not to be judged or validated by those who cannot see it. The challenge, of course, is that showing up fully as yourself requires courage. It requires the willingness to be visible, to risk criticism, and to face the discomfort that comes with being different. Many people spend their lives dimming their light. They hold back their ideas, silence their voice, and hide their passions out of fear that someone will disapprove. But the truth is, every time we do this, the world loses a piece of what we are capable of giving. When we shrink ourselves to fit into someone else's expectations, we deny others the opportunity to benefit from our talents, wisdom, and kindness. Your light is not just for you. It is for everyone who comes into contact with it. Resistance is inevitable. Whenever we try to shine, we encounter people who do not understand, who feel threatened, or who project their own insecurities onto us. This resistance is not a reflection of your worth or your potential. In fact, it often indicates that you are moving in the right direction, stepping into areas that require courage and conviction. The stronger the resistance, the more necessary it becomes to stay true to yourself. It is in those moments when the world seems unwelcoming or critical that your light has the greatest opportunity to shine. Shining your light also means embracing authenticity. It means pursuing your goals, sharing your ideas, and living according to your values, even if it feels uncomfortable or risky. It means offering kindness without expecting reciprocity, speaking your truth without fearing judgment, and taking action even when others doubt your vision. Each small act of courage, each moment of authenticity adds to the brilliance of your light and strengthens your resilience. Finally, shining your light despite resistance is a gift, not only to yourself, but to others. It inspires people to do the same, creating a ripple effect of courage, creativity, and positivity. When you choose to shine, you remind others that it is possible to live fully, boldly, and unapologetically. Your light becomes a beacon, guiding others toward hope, growth, and purpose. Resistance may come, and it may try to push you down, but your light is stronger than any obstacle, brighter than any doubt, and more enduring than any criticism. By choosing to shine regardless, you honor your purpose, embrace your authenticity, and leave an impact that no darkness can ever erase. One of the most transformative lessons in life is learning to love without expectation. From a young age, we are conditioned to give and receive love in a transactional way. If we help someone, we hope for gratitude. If we care for someone, we hope for reciprocity. if we show kindness, we hope it will be returned. And when it isn't, we feel hurt, disappointed, or even resentful. But true love, the kind that brings deep peace and joy, is not transactional. It does not ask for recognition, reward, or approval. It simply flows freely, generously, and without strings attached. Loving without expectation begins with understanding that our actions, care, and affection are our gifts, not contracts. When we love with conditions, we create an invisible debt, unconsciously demanding that the world repay us for what we give. And when it doesn't, we suffer. But when we love without expecting anything in return, we experience freedom, a freedom that cannot be shaken by disappointment or rejection. This kind of love does not make us weak, it makes us strong. Because it is grounded in authenticity, in the compassion and generosity rather than in the fragile need for validation. Think about how powerful it is when someone loves without expectation. Their actions are pure, their gestures are kind, and their presence is uplifting. They do not measure their love by the reactions they receive. They measure it by the depth of care they feel in their heart. And that purity is what makes their love transformative. It is the kind of love that inspires others, softens hearts, and heals wounds. It is not dependent on circumstances, and it does not falter because someone fails to meet our standards. Loving without expectation also requires courage and self-awareness. It means accepting that not everyone will respond in the way we hope, and that is okay. Sometimes, the people we love may not understand us, may not appreciate our gestures, or may even reject our care. This does not diminish the value of our love. It simply reflects the reality that everyone has their own journey, their own timing, and their own perspective. When we detach our love from outcomes, we create space for genuine connection, free from the chains of control, fear, or resentment. Moreover, loving without expectation is not limited to romantic relationships or close family bonds. It extends to friends, colleagues, strangers, and even ourselves. When we stop measuring our love by returns, we learn to be kinder to others and to ourselves. We stop being critical, judgmental, or manipulative, and we start being present, compassionate, and empathetic. Our energy becomes lighter, and our relationships become more authentic because they are built on genuine care rather than on obligation or desire for reward. This kind of love transforms the way we experience the world. It allows us to give fully, to nurture freely, and to connect deeply. It removes the burden of expectation from both ourselves and others, creating a sense of peace and joy that cannot be shaken by disappointment. Loving without expectation is one of the greatest acts of courage and wisdom because it reflects a deep understanding of life's impermanence, the uniqueness of each individual's journey, and the infinite capacity of the human heart. When we embrace this principle, we begin to live a life of generosity, freedom, and joy. We love not to be acknowledged, rewarded, or approved, but simply because love is what we are meant to give. And in giving love without expectation, we not only illuminate the lives of others, but also nurture our own hearts in a way that is deeply fulfilling, profoundly liberating, and eternally enriching. One of the most profound realizations a person can have is that peace comes from self-acceptance. For much of our lives, we search for peace in the outside world through achievements, recognition, relationships, or material comforts. We think that if we can just reach a certain milestone, gain the approval of others, or surround ourselves with ideal circumstances, we will finally feel calm, fulfilled, and at ease. And yet, no matter how much we acquire or accomplish, true peace remains elusive if we have not accepted ourselves fully, just as we are. Self-acceptance begins with the courage to acknowledge your strengths and weaknesses alike. It means recognizing your talents, your passions, and your unique qualities, while also embracing your flaws, mistakes, and limitations. Often, we spend more time criticizing ourselves than celebrating who we are. We measure ourselves against unrealistic standards, compare ourselves to others, and focus on what we lack rather than what we possess. But the moment we start embracing ourselves completely and without judgment, something extraordinary happens. A deep, unshakable sense of peace begins to arise from within. Think about it. When you accept yourself, you stop living in constant fear of judgment or failure. You stop bending, hiding, or performing to fit someone else's expectations. You allow yourself to be authentic, to speak your truth, and to act in alignment with your values. Self-acceptance frees you from the exhausting pursuit of perfection. It allows you to acknowledge that you are enough, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And in this realization, there is immense liberation. Self-acceptance does not mean complacency or stagnation. It does not mean ignoring areas where growth is possible or necessary. On the contrary, when you accept yourself, you create a foundation of stability from which true growth can flourish. You no longer act out of fear, guilt, or shame. You act out of love, intention, and authenticity. Acceptance provides clarity, confidence, and resilience. It becomes the soil in which personal development, meaningful relationships, and inner peace can thrive. One of the most powerful aspects of self-acceptance is that it silences the inner critic. That voice inside your head, the one that constantly says, "You're not good enough," or "You should be different," loses its grip when you embrace who you are. You realize that imperfection is not a flaw, but a human trait. You learn to treat yourself with compassion, patience, and understanding, the same way you would treat someone you deeply care about. In doing so, the turmoil and anxiety that often plague our minds begin to fade, replaced by calm and clarity. Peace also comes from accepting that life itself is imperfect. Challenges, setbacks, and disappointments are inevitable. But when you are at peace with yourself, these difficulties no longer shake your sense of worth. You respond to life with equanimity, courage, and resilience rather than fear, frustration, or resentment. You understand that life is not about flawless performance or universal approval. It is about living fully, authentically, and with integrity, regardless of external circumstances. Ultimately, self-acceptance is the key to a life of inner calm, joy, and contentment. It allows you to release the burden of constant comparison, to stop seeking validation from others, and to embrace your journey exactly as it is. When you accept yourself, you stop running from who you are and start living as who you are meant to be. In this acceptance, you find a peace that cannot be disturbed by judgment, criticism, or the unpredictable nature of life. A peace that is steadfast, enduring, and deeply nourishing.